everyone. Welcome to Art and Talk's Impression Show. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Impression. If you're new to Art and Talk's Impression Show, welcome. If you've been with us for a while, thank you for your continued support. You know that Art and Talk is all about meeting artists and being inspired. We aim to dive into the heart and mind of each guest artist to get a wider perspective of their art, their message, and their process. All right, so today our guest, as I'm sure you know, is a musician, percussionist, international Latin recording artist. He's a band leader. He's also a songwriter and producer. And we'll be getting into different aspects of his music and also his dedication to preserving his father's musical legacy. All right, so let's get started. I'd like to welcome our guest for today, Tito Puente Jr. Hi, Tito.
That was thank you guys for having. That was my little performance for you. I knew I had a cowbell with Tito Puente on it, so it was important. But thank you for having me on the show, Art and Talk. It's a pleasure to be here today. Muchas gracias, y'all.
Thank you for being with us. Gosh, what a joy and a delight. I'm wondering, Tito, if we could open up the show with, I'm just trying to imagine growing up in the Puente household. I imagine there were timbales and drum sets around and sticks. Did it provide an opportunity for you as a child, Tito, to just, kind of pick up the sticks and start to play? How did all that kind of play out?
Well, growing up in New York City, and then we moved up to a place called Rockland County. My father, of course, being the Latin percussion icon, Tito Puente. Those of you who might not know, he was a Latin band ambassador of Latin music worldwide. He was the king of the Timbales, king of Latin music. He had many monikers to his name, but it was incredible. He had an incredible life. Passed away about 22 years ago, but he had a 50-year career, 7-time Grammy Award winner, over 180 albums to his credit. And he was just a master percussion player. So growing up around someone like that, in general, of course, you're going to gravitate towards music, number one. And of course, when you're a kid, your parents tell you not to touch something. What do you do as a kid? You go ahead and touch it. So in our garage, we had a lot of drums, cowbells, percussion, maracas, congas, timbales, bongos, all kinds of marimbas, vibraphone. I had so many instruments in our garage simply because of my father being a musician that I ended up honing towards it. And of course, you start playing them. And I'm so grateful that I got that opportunity to do that.
And Tito, was there a defining moment where you recognized and knew that you had musical talent yourself and that you wanted to move forward in this trajectory?
Yes, well, I always in my room I would play, the bed sheets, and I had squares on my bed sheets, and I would pretend they were these Simmons drum pads. And I guess growing up in the '80s, I'm an '80s kid, and I really enjoyed the music of that era and that time frame, coming out of the '70s and into the '80s, the whole rock and disco, and then house music and then pop music, and everything was so eclectic and so vibrant and different at the time. Music was very, very important to our upbringing. We didn't have social media or anything like this, even Zoom calls or anything that had to do with a phone at that point. So music was our outlet and how we transcended through our feelings. And you wanted to say hello to your friend, you would have to call the local radio station and say, "Hey, I'm making a dedication to my friend or girlfriend or boyfriend at the time." How you felt about them, and you dedicate a song to them. I didn't care for mambo music, but my father was heavily into Latin and jazz music, and I was into pop and rock music. So I integrated into that world first. And then, of course, traveling with Tito Puente, I felt that mambo and Latin flavors, the clave rhythm, and the desire to hone in on more on my Latin heritage, my roots, and of course, his music in the fold.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had like a mixture of different influences growing up with, you're saying like kind of like rock, pop, disco, kind of lots of different influences. So is it correct, Tino, that then as you were traveling with your dad and you were, exposed to more Latin music and seeing him perform and his status as a Mambo king, and, just such, immense brilliance on the timbales and all his major contributions. That's kind of what it sounds like kind of sparked you to say, like, okay, I'm going to kind of like pursue this myself. Is that correct?
Yes, and a lot of people wouldn't believe it, but my father did not teach me how to play drums. Knowing that he was an icon, a legend, a master percussion player, that he would easily have taught his children, let alone other students or anything like that. My father was not a drum teacher. He made me go to school, get my education, and learn how to read and write music. And I'm very grateful for that, that he pushed me to do that. The reason why I got into Latin music, I was always into pop and rock music. I had a heavy metal band. I played trap kit, which is a standard drum set. And I loved rock music. And I was always into the Iron Maiden, the Def Leppard, the Bon Jovi, the Metallica, the heavy bands. And then of course, pop music, the Michael Jacksons, the Phil Collins, and I always was into the Madonna and, the pop music of the 80s at that time. And I didn't really care for Latin music, but when my mother, Margaret Puente, who's still with us today, she pushed me to travel with my father. I was a teenager at the time, so I was more into rebellion and rock music and roller skating in the 80s, and then singing and playing mambo music, or salsa music as they called it today, and traveling with him around the world, to the Far East, to the Orient, to China, Japan, Indonesia, countries that they did not know the language of English nor Spanish, and seeing how Tito Puente, uh, his language was his music. That's when I decided to hone in on more on what he did in his bag, the Latin jazz, world. But I'm very grateful that he sent me to go to school to learn and read and write, and then I would watch him and listen on the entertainment side, the business side of music.
Yes. What an interesting journey, kind of having the traditional formal education, and of course, the amazing privilege to watch and hear your dad and also get that training as well.
Yeah, it was amazing being around a genius like that. But to me, he was just my father. To everybody else, he was this global icon, and this gray-haired man or white-haired man that played the incredibly well percussion and marimba and vibraphones. And he was in just opened up doors for all Hispanics and all Latin artists at that time. Him and of course our queen, as we called Miss Celia Cruz, who was a very, very powerful voice in the Latin music world. She's no longer with us as well, but those two icons really opened up the doors for the likes of Mark Anthony, Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, even Carlos Santana, and all of them. They all give tribute and respect to the pioneers that opened up the doors and were the catalysts of Latin music from the 1940s and 50s all the way even until today. But an incredible ride it was, and I'm so glad that I got to be his son, and I remember him, and I continue his legacy by performing his music every day for the new generation.
Yes, yes. And how amazing to, his musical legacy is just so vast and so comprehensive. And his arrangements, his compositions, I mean, his ingenuity, innovation, his experimentations really held him in this space of an amazing musical pioneer.
Yes, he wasn't a musical pioneer, very innovative, from the 1950s and 60s for someone who was just coming out of the war. He was served in the U.S. Navy for 3 years in battle, fought in 9 combats in the war. So for a young kid to be drafted at a very young age, at the age of 16, 17 years old in 1941, and then coming out of the war, and then going to Juilliard School of Music under the GI Bill, then becoming the the icon Tito Puente with his own orchestra and arranging and compositions. It was innovative at the style, and even till today, when you hear Tito Puente records, they still sound fresh as they did over 50 years ago. I perform his music, as I said before, around the world, and I still continue to see fans of all ages and spectrums of color coming to the concerts and enjoying the music as if they heard it for the first time. When you come to a Tito Puente Jr. concert, you're going to go on a journey from the essence of Afro-Cuban music, what my father was really known for, and then of course his arrangements and the whole evolution of mambo music and salsa music as we know it today. So it's not only a concert and you're feeling great about the music and dancing, but you're also getting an educational aspect in between the songs. I kind of described the evolution of Mambo and where Tito Puente's career, his trajectory went to all the way up until his unfortunate passing in 2000. But again, it's amazing to see the multitude of people who still think this music is fresh and new, and you'll hear it in all the recordings.
Yes, and it's so high spirited. And speaking about dance, there was a beautiful quote by your dad where he's saying that if there is no dance, there is no music.
Oh, I love that quote so much. And it really defines what he was a person that brought people to dance floors around the world and brought people together as an ambassador of Latin music. That's what he strived for, a philanthropist. And of course, he had a Tito Puente scholarship fund for over 20 years where he would give to inner city kids scholarships so they can perform in performing arts centers and conservatories of music. But that's what he did. He brought people together, and that was the Pope of Mambo, they would call him, because he brought, people from all colors, races, religions, creeds, languages. He brought them all together for one purpose, and that's to enjoy music for a few hours that he created and brought people to dance floors. Tito Puente was a dancer. When he was growing up in Spanish Harlem, New York, from humble beginnings, he danced with my aunt. Her name was Annie, and she passed away when she was 18 years old. But they won dance contests around the El Barrio section of New York City, which is Spanish Harlem. And they would go to different schools and playhouses at that time. They had halls where they had dance contests, and Tito Puente would win them all the time when he was a young teenager, 10, 11 years old. He got into a bicycle accident and then started playing the drums. And that's where he honed in on his skills as a percussion player. But Tito Puente was always a dancer in his mind and in his heart. But he was presented, and you can hear it when he's playing. If you ever look at a Tito Puente solo, it sounds like his hands are dancing. So that's where he connects the two. Without dance, there's no music. Without music, there is no dance.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so wonderful that he brought not only the Latin music to, popularize it, but also that aspect of dance as well, and also to unify, as you were saying, because it brought so many different cultures and peoples together. So it really was this unifying force through power and, of course, his skill and expertise to really kind of bring a sense of almost like oneness among people, and to get out there and listen to this music and to get out there and dance.
Yes, and not only that, my father was he was non-politicized. He didn't care for politics. So when he would meet ambassadors of different countries and of cities, or wherever have you, he played for 7 different presidents, Democratic and Republican. He would play for the LGBTQ community. He would play he would play for different religions. He would play for kings and queens of different countries. In Japan and in China, he would go to different countries where they didn't get along with the U.S. as well. Tito Puente was that ambassador because the music brought people together. And that's something that to be said for him, because in this world that we live in now, there's a lot of cancel culture and different sides. Tito Puente brought those barriers down along with Celia Cruz and brought multicultural people together. My dad's biggest fans were Italians and Jewish people from Brooklyn, New York. A Puerto Rican kid from El Barrio, New York, but more Jewish people and Italian people to his concerts than anyone else at that time. And that's something to be said, because they didn't even know the language of Spanish, and neither my father was really the James Cagney and the Puerto Rican musicianship. He really brought everybody together, and that includes all the 5 boroughs of Manhattan as well, or pardon me, not Manhattan, of New York City. He would bring people all together because there's different pockets of cultures and colors and people in New York. And Tito Puente was that person that you didn't know whether he was black or white or Italian or Jewish. You look at Tito Puente, he's all of that. So he embodies that imagery of togetherness, and a culturally defined as a unified person and a worldwide figure. I would put him in that Tchaikovsky, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Beethoven, type of icon. Tito Puente is right there. He stands with them.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I love that visionary aspect and no boundaries. no lines, just, really looking at things from a unified perspective. And that's so beautiful. I'm wondering, Tito, what do you bring as your own signature sound, as honoring your father and his musical legacy and being so committed and devoted to that? But in your own performance, and we know you have some other influences musically, but what is your own signature sound that you bring into the mix while simultaneously honoring your father?
I always honor him in every one of my concerts. And not only that, I have a kind of a spitting image of him, just the way I look. I don't have the white hair yet, but that's coming soon. But when I do my own styles, or when I am performing, the quirkiness of myself, my personality comes out during the songs, and of course in between. I'm kind of talking to a younger generation now. It's a new generation. There are kids today who are 22 years old that never saw or heard Tito Puente before ever. And only history books and of course internet, you will only be able to see his performances and hear about him. Back when we were growing up, we have to look in an encyclopedia. Now you just go online and you can find out a lot about a person. But those kids, I would put them in that category, or young adults, never got to experience and seeing Tito Puente live, or hearing his music. I bring that to their generation now, and I think I speak to them in that language of multicultural feeling. When you come to the show, the quirkiness that I do have, I keep it. I guess what we say in New York, we keep it real. So I'll tell everybody where I come from, and how I adapted to the music that he left on this planet, and how I bring it to you guys in the most purest form. I take my father's arrangements and his compositions, I present them to the maximum level that he would have wanted them to be performed by not just his son, but by any band. He would want them to present it in the way that he wrote them, and especially the lyrical content too. There are so many hits from Tito Puente: Ran Can Can, El Cayuco Mambo song, the world famous Oye Como Va. There's so many great songs that he brought to the Latin music world, and not only to that, they crossed over into rock and into hip hop and into salsa music and to all genres, jazz, especially Latin jazz. So that an icon and a legend like that music should be in perpetuity given to the next generation, and that's what I do during my show. So when you come to the concert, you'll have the personality of Tito Puente Jr., but I'll speak to you in your language. How you guys doing tonight? How are you? Are you feeling the music? I connect with the crowd, whether they're young or old, and I try to make sure that they remember. And I tell all the parents and grandparents, teach your kids where this music comes from. It comes from Celia Cruz, Johnny Pacheco, Tito Puente, the Fania All-Stars, Machito, Tito Rodriguez. They're very, very instrumental in bringing forth the music from yesteryear to now, today. We all love the Bad Bunnies of the world and the Daddy Yankees, and these are very popular figures today with young kids, but they do recognize where their music comes from. And it comes from the music of Tito Puente and Celia Cruz and the Latin historical figures that we had of our time.
Yes, I love that. And I love that, like I was saying, the whole educational aspect as well. And you bringing in, like, your own aspects to it also. I'm wondering, what is currently going on? I mean, you've touched upon this as we've been speaking, currently going on in Latin music. And do you have a vision of where you want to take this music? Obviously, preserving your father's huge musical legacy, but does it encompass a more of a vision? Is there anything else going on that you can share with us in that regard?
Yes, I believe that there should be, and hopefully the government should take note, because a lot of other countries have conservatories of music. And I think that's what's lacking and missing in the schools today. When we grew up, there was a big music program at that time. And my father said, learn a little bit about, in high school and junior high school, be in the band class and play whatever instrument that you can. I played viola, bass, violin, clarinet. I tried them all. Some things I was good at, some things I was really poor at. Cowbell I did pretty good at. And, that to me is what's lacking in the school system here in the United States. And abroad, I see, even in South America and in countries and in third world countries and in countries that don't have the resources, maybe much don't have the capabilities to raise funds or anything like that, I still see them appreciating their culture and having conservatories of music. Uh, it's amazing when I travel the planet how much I see that, and I see that lacking in the United States. I hope that your viewers or whoever's listening or watching um, take note of that and bring that to your local school system or school district. It's who we vote in, that really we want to program everybody back to putting in music in the schools. I think that's so essential and paramount to keeping kids off the street. We've seen way too much gun violence in this country. We've seen way too much bad things happening to our young, talented musicians and talented singers and performers and dancers and artists, that we have to have more programs in the school to bring music. Tell you, if Tito Puente was an ambassador of music, it would be amazing if he was still here today. I think he would probably become the president in order to bring people back together and music back to the schools. To me, that's my kind of my position where I would like to be in a few years, in being an advocate, especially with the Recording Academy, with the Grammys, and hopefully we can get more music in the schools. I think it's very, very essential for that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm wondering, Tito, if you could share with us, is there something that you still carry with you today that your father instilled in you, a trait or so, as a person in life, and then also specifically within your music?
Well, I could say, okay, here, there's a nice photo of him. So I'll say one thing is the good looks. So thank you, Dad, for the good looks. He was very, very handsome, even at his old elder stage too. So, and I don't have the white hair, so I'm grateful for that. I'm 51 now, and he had white hair at 40 something years old. So I made it this far without it, and I'm very just grateful for that. But I can share with you now something that my dad did teach me, and hopefully this will inspire some of your viewers and anybody who's listening in, especially the young ones. He taught me this: surround yourself with creative people, thus you will be creative. And the reason why he said that to me is because my father had a nostalgic or a camaraderie to be around musicians all the time. He wanted to be around musicians because what it does is you bank ideas off each other. It wasn't a copying thing now. Nowadays, oh, copyright, copyright. No, what you were getting is an industrialized way of bringing people together and bringing musicians together, bouncing ideas off each other and being inspired off each other, thus being creative. If you surround yourself, I could sit for hours with my musicians after a show when they're tired and they want to go back to their hotel and they're like, leave me alone. I'll keep talking about music. I'll keep talking about the next gig, and I'll keep talking about the industry and where we're at today and where we came from, and the music of Puente and the music of the historical pioneers. So surround yourself with those creative people. You will get jobs, and you're going to be more creative in your art craft, whether it be an artist or an artwork, or a cultural person that designs interior decorating, whatever it may be, whatever it may be that you desire and love to do, your passion. Surround yourself with people that do that. I always felt I like being around percussion players simply because I am a percussionist. So if I see a drummer that's really, really good, I want to get closer to that person and see what drives them and how do they practice in skills. I always take constructive criticism simply because I'm the son of the king of Latin music and one of the pioneers. So I get compared a lot. And the way that I retract from getting my mindset and saying, well, it's disrespectful that they're telling me that I should know how to play. I always reach out and I say, well, how can I be better? How can I learn maybe something that a paradiddle, some sort of 7-stroke roll, some sort of drumming technique that I can learn from you, or maybe you can direct me to somebody or a YouTube page or something where I can learn that, so I can really bring that into my fold of what I'm doing and thus be more creative. And that's why I always say that. During the whole lockdown, I can remember a lot of musicians reaching out to me. They're like, man, I wish I was playing again. I wish I was around you guys. And So it was great to have this type of a platform where we can Zoom each other and talk about these things. And nice to see now that we're performing somewhat a little bit again, and being around the musicians has gotten me more creative. And I had to do a whole album on the lockdown, which was even more of a struggle for me because I couldn't be in a studio with the musicians and the recording artists. So I had to do it remotely, and everybody had to come in on their certain days, and we were separated and social distance. So it was more difficult for me, but what it did is bring me closer to the music and how much I appreciate what my father taught me. Surround yourself and be in a room with creative people, and you're going to feel that energy of being creative.
Yes, oh, that was so beautifully said and so inspiring. Just like get out there and be around other creatives, and that creative juice starts to flow. And I love that you found a way even during the pandemic and the lockdown and whatnot to still be able to find a way, with what was going on, to still connect, to still be creative, to support and encourage one another, all in the name of music and creativity.
Yeah, very, very important, especially for your mental health. A lot of people have mentally health was not well during the whole lockdown, and now that we're coming out of it, some people don't know how to readjust themselves. So through music, I got myself back on track on what really was important to me, and that was performing music, making music, and entertaining the fans. Very, very important.
Absolutely. We just have another moment or so, Tito. I know your most recent album is The King and I. Which I know is a tribute to your father. Could you touch upon that for us?
Yes, I just recently put out a record. It's called The King and I. It was I did it remotely again, as I said before, during the pandemic. I wanted to get some of the greatest musicians that worked with directly the king of Latin music, thus the album title The King and I, speaking on behalf of all the musicians and greatest Grammy award winning entertainers that work with Tito Puente. Domingo Quiñones, Tony Vega, Jose Beto Canario, Frankie Negron, Sheila E., Pete Escovedo, my brother Ronnie Puente, Humberto Ramirez. All of these great artists are Grammy nominated and Grammy Award winners. I reached out to each and every one of them to do a tribute, 20-year anniversary tribute of my father's passing. And I wanted to tribute my father in a way that I could only do as his son, and bring the music of 5 decades of his career and put it all on one album with these fantastic recording artists. And I did it, and it's called The King and I. I got to release it. It's about a year old, but it was amazing when we released it. We released it during the lockdown, and people just gravitated towards it because it was such an uplifting and high energy, up tempo, danceable record. So I would see all the social media on the Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and I would see everybody dancing to the album and dancing to these songs. And I'm so grateful that the response has been overwhelming. We are now officially kicking off a tour to support the record. Next year will be the centennial anniversary of Tito Puente. It will be his 100th birthday next April, and we plan on doing a very big concert with all the artists that are on the album in about 6 different cities. Of course, New York being one of them, South Florida. We're looking at Los Angeles, Chicago, and possibly Texas. So we're looking to do that in the United States, and of course, taking it abroad overseas and to South America. Very, very exciting. And during the lockdown, when I put out the album, The King and I, my wife, I got to give her credit. She had a brilliant idea. She said, the fans would like to have tangible items. At that time, everybody was putting out T-shirts and hats. And I said, man, I can do that. But a lot of people have Tito Puente shirts and Tito Puente hats and things of that nature. I said, when she came up with the idea, I said, do something different. And why don't you put out something that people are doing a lot during the lockdown? And that was eating. And everybody was eating something. So she decided and came up with the idea of putting out a Tito Puente Jr. hot sauce. So this is Tito Puente salsa. So now you got Tito Puente Jr. salsa and Tito Puente Jr. food and listening to. So it was a great idea. This is called the salsa bundle pack. I got some fantastic, great different flavors. Mango maple syrup. These are all hot sauces, by the way. Picante. I got guava. I got 4 different ones, and then you get the album with it, and I throw in a picture and drumsticks, and it's called the Salsa Bundle Pack. You can get it at Tito Puente Jr. myshopify.com, or just follow all my social media, and you guys can grab the album. It's on all digital platforms, Apple Music, Amazon, iTunes, all that. And the physical CD is at Tito Puente Jr. myshopify.com. And you can get those for Labor Day. I know everybody loves to go to the beach and barbecue during Labor Day. Pick up some hot sauce. You guys are going to love it. You can put it on anything: beef, poultry, steak, salads. I put it on a cake the other day. And it was a great idea. So people are really enjoying it. Hot sauce para comer, which is to eat, and salsa that you can listen to, para escuchar. The King and I out now.
I love that. I love it. You're combining all these different senses, and much success with the tour and embarking, and keeping the legacy of your father's music alive, and all your different skills and expertise, and sharing your knowledge. And the hot sauce looks delicious. I did a little bit of research. It's all natural. It's non-GMO and it's vegan friendly.
Wow, you did your homework. Thank you. Yeah, it's all natural stuff. You guys can get them, and they're fantastic with anything. And I wanted to keep that very transparent, as people today are very, query about what they're putting in their bodies. So I got some good hot music to put in your ear and good hot music to put in your belly, or got hot sauce to put in your belly.
I think that's a wonderful note to close out the show. Tito, it has been such an honor and delight to connect with you. Thank you so much for coming aboard Art and Talks Impression Show.
Muchas gracias. I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. I love the show Art and Talk, and I'm glad that you are embracing the mambo music of my late father, and of course what we're doing here on your program. Follow me on all my social media pages at Tito Puente Jr. at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I have a YouTube channel and TikTok, of course. And I'll see you guys in concert real soon. You guys can see all my tour dates there. We're heading to New York, and then I got a big Midwestern tour coming up in September, October, November. Woo, it's getting pretty busy, and I'm very grateful for that. And thank you once again for having me on the program.
Welcome. Thank you, Tito. Again, it's been an honor. Much success with the tour and all your musical endeavors and all that you're preserving. Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching Art and Talks Impression Show. We always appreciate the time you take to watch our artist videos. Please do stay connected with us on our Art and Talk YouTube channel and also on our Facebook page. We'll be making sure we include all of Tito's social media links and whatnot, so you can stay in touch with him and get some of that hot sauce in his new album, and find out about his tour dates. All right, so we'll talk soon on the next Impression Show. Until then, be well and be blessed.